he hadn't spoke to me. He hadn't give any up. He was already giving updates on my health, and he had no idea what had gone on. Yeah, so disappointing, mate. Disappointing.
I wasn't saying anything negative toward him. And I think the thing's going to be taken out of context, or he didn't see what I said, because I don't even remember what the I said. But never once did I say anything negative about him or, in a derogatory way.
The MMA world just exploded again. Dana White dropped some comments about Tom Aspinall that sent shockwaves through every corner of the fight community. This whole thing has sparked debates that are spreading like wildfire across social media and every MMA platform you can think of.
Realize people genuinely think that I faked this. People actually think that I was faking it. And then I was like, did people actually see the replay of what happened? Because that was a full-on eye poke. So then I was like, what is going on? Why are people thinking I'm faking this, like, after everything that I've been through to get there? So then I left it quite a while. I thought, right, I'm going to get all the doctor's notes included. I've been through it for like loads and loads of tests for weeks. I've literally been in the hospital 2 or 3 times a week getting different tests. Then I come up with a doctor's report, and then people are like, oh, he's fine about it. He's doing a media tour on it. He's milking it.
So Tom finally spoke out about the insane reaction he got after his fight. What he went through sounds completely unreal when you break it down. Fans were literally saying he made up his injury, which is absolutely bonkers considering the footage showed that eye poke clear as day, but people kept doubting him anyway. Even after he went through countless medical appointments and gathered every piece of documentation possible to prove the injury was real, spending weeks with specialists and getting official reports. You'd think that would shut people up, right? Wrong. All those medical records just brought even more criticism. More people questioning whether he was being honest about the whole situation.
Yeah, slightly disappointing because he hadn't spoke to me. He hadn't give any up. He was already giving updates on my health, and he had no idea what had gone on. Yeah, so disappointing, mate. Disappointing.
Tom opened up about Dana's public statements and admitted they stung a bit, which honestly makes total sense from where he's sitting. The thing that bothered him most was that Dana was updating everyone about his medical situation without actually talking to him first, making public announcements about his health without getting the full story directly from Tom himself. It felt like conversations were happening about his life and career while he was completely left out of the loop. That's got to be frustrating when someone's discussing your medical condition with the entire world before they even bother to call and check how you're actually doing.
So obviously, and I know Tom said, I haven't even talked to him and all that stuff, but we have people all over him right now, checking up on him, making sure he's good. Does he need any help or, any specialists? Yeah, I'm no doctor. I'm just saying what I've heard. And that was in no way, it wasn't said in a way that they're like, oh, what do you think? I said, I think he's fine. Or it wasn't like that. I said, I think Tom's eyes are good. He's going to take some time, heal.
Dana fired back with his own explanation, pointing out that the UFC had their team monitoring Tom's situation around the clock. They were completely on top of it from day one. Medical staff, specialists, whatever Tom needed for his recovery, the organization was covering it and staying in regular contact about his progress. According to Dana, he was just sharing what the medical professionals were telling him about Tom's condition and expected timeline for getting back to training. Dana made it crystal clear he wasn't trying to dismiss what Tom went through or act like the injury wasn't legitimate. His whole point was just that Tom would get better, take the necessary time to heal completely, and come back ready to perform at championship level again.
I wasn't saying anything negative toward him. And I think the thing's going to be taken out of context, or he didn't see what I said, because I don't even remember what the I said. But never once did I say anything negative about him or, in a derogatory way. I'm sure he's upset and fired up, and, he'll get better, and we'll get him back in.
Dana went on to clarify that his words got twisted in the media circus, which seems to happen constantly in today's fight coverage, where every sentence gets picked apart. He couldn't even recall his exact phrasing, but swore what he said was meant to disrespect Tom or downplay what happened. Dana acknowledged that Tom was obviously dealing with heavy emotions after such a serious eye injury in a massive fight, which is completely understandable. Anyone would be upset in that situation. His message was straightforward. Tom recovers properly and returns when he's medically cleared. Nothing deeper than that.
I mean, what I would say is if Aspinall was a huge driver of an audience for them, Dana would probably look past a lot of whatever else is driving the friction, right? So we probably wouldn't even be asking this question if he was drawing like enormous amounts of eyeballs. It just wouldn't even be a part of the conversation. You would be factoring in that Dana would just, find a way to make good use of that, which, by the way, you would expect a promoter to do that. That would be the right thing to do. So the fact that he's not doing that kind of tells you where you're at. Now, again, I don't think that's the biggest indictment on Tom. There's just not many stars, and Tom could be big and important for the UK market, which of course I think that he is, but he just hasn't graduated. Dude, it takes a long time to become a superstar. You have to get fights like the John Jones fight. You got to kind of win them. That's the thing that elevates you.
Luke Thomas jumped in with a different angle, saying this whole drama isn't really about personal beef between Dana and Tom. It comes down to star power and how the promotional machine works. If Tom was already one of those massive pay-per-view draws who sells out arenas just by showing up, the UFC would probably shield him much harder from any negative press and control the story more aggressively. Organizations naturally protect their biggest moneymakers because that's how the business operates in combat sports. Tom hasn't reached that superstar level yet, those career-defining moments that launch someone into household name territory. That doesn't mean he lacks talent, it just shows where he currently sits in terms of mainstream appeal and commercial value.
Enormous superstar potential, but hasn't actualized it yet, and I think Dana's calculus probably plays into that. However, what I would say is there's got to be something more to the story. They don't like that Tom might have asked for certain things or said no to certain things. They may not like that Tom's father is his own man and that speaks his mind. I mean, there could be any number of other things that are probably also exacerbating tensions, because I seriously doubt it's strictly. I mean, like on the one hand, Aspinall's not a superstar. On the other hand, he's not a nobody either.
Luke thinks Tom has all the tools to become a major star, but isn't quite there yet, which influences how Dana handles these situations. But Luke suspects there's more going on behind the scenes than just drawing power. Maybe Tom turned down certain fights the UFC wanted him to take, or rejected media appearances they needed him to do. Could be that his father's involvement in negotiations rubbed management the wrong way. You know how promoters react when family starts getting heavily involved in business decisions. Tom exists in that tricky middle space where he's a legitimate threat in the division, but not quite powerful enough to call all his own shots.
I think we need to look at preventative measures too, and I think a lot of that rests in the glove. It's not like a magic. There's no rocket science. It's not a magic wand. I'm not saying that it's an easier mechanic as well. If we have a difference in the glove, without getting into it here, talking about how fighters' hands are during a fight, in a natural C, closed. Obviously, they still have to be able to open their hand to facilitate the grappling. But I think it's a twofold attack. One is mechanical, like I said, a change in the glove, a design to make sure that we can at least help to keep the hand in a relaxed state. Then if it's what I think then for referees, it's a much easier mechanic.
Mark Goddard brought his referee expertise to the conversation, arguing that the sport needs to focus on stopping eye pokes before they happen, instead of just punishing fighters afterward. He believes fixing the glove design itself would address the core problem, rather than trying to manage it during fights. Better gloves that naturally keep hands in safe positions would eliminate most accidental pokes, while still allowing all the grappling techniques fighters need. This would make life easier for referees who currently have to constantly monitor hand positioning and risk missing important action to give warnings about finger placement.
In a fight, I've never, ever, like I said, 21 years as a ref, I've never actually, in a free-form fight when people are exchanging blows, I've never once thought that a fighter has done that intentionally to poke someone in the eye. It just doesn't. I've got news flash. It just doesn't happen like that. Unfortunately, stylistically, unfortunate bad things happen in fights, and we're going to tackle it. That's all I can say. Please.
Goddard made an important point about intent, saying that in over 20 years of officiating elite fights, he's never seen a fighter deliberately try to poke someone's eye. These incidents happen because of fighting mechanics and the chaos of close exchanges, not because anyone's trying to cheat or fight dirty. He wants fans to understand that distinction and recognize these are almost always genuine accidents rather than intentional fouls. He acknowledged that the sport is actively working on solutions, but asked for patience while changes get developed and implemented across different athletic commissions.
Wrestling, for example, with absolutely no glove whatsoever, we don't have a lot of eye pokes. They happen. They're not non-existent, but it's not to the point that it's a problem. Olympic judo. Judo in general doesn't have to be the Olympics, but you're allowed to touch the person's face. You're allowed to reach for the person. You're encouraged to do so, and you don't really have what you would define as a problem with eye pokes. So, well, this is part of the pretend. This is all part of the pretend. We're pretending that the person poking the other person in the eyes is not trying to poke them in the eyes. We can't imagine that they would.
Chael Sonnen brought up an interesting comparison, pointing out that wrestling and judo involve constant hand fighting and battles for grips, but rarely see eye pokes happening. To him, that proves this isn't just an unavoidable part of combat sports we have to live with. The problem is specific to how MMA is structured, the equipment choices and rule enforcement that create this environment. He thinks we're naive to assume fighters never poke eyes intentionally when the open finger glove design makes accidents almost guaranteed, given how MMA fights unfold.
We've got the three big rules. We call them the big three because they're the only ones that were around in yesterday and they're allowed today. Don't bite him. Don't kick the son of a bitch when he's down, and don't touch his eyes. Any one of those three has got to, if you want it to stop. And by the way, you don't need to change the gloves. Like, this is a cop-out. This is a massive cop-out. If you start disqualifying athletes for any one of those three, you will never see any of those three again. You can change the glove. You can chop their fingers off, or you can just hold them accountable when they do it. And that seems to be the one big idea that nobody has yet had.
According to Chael, the real issue isn't glove design at all. It's inconsistent rule enforcement. He reminded everyone that MMA already has three basic rules everyone agrees on: no biting, no kicks to grounded opponents, and no eye attacks. If fighters actually got disqualified and lost their purses for breaking these rules, he argues eye pokes would stop immediately because the financial consequences would change behavior overnight. In his view, blaming equipment design is just avoiding the harder solution of actually enforcing existing rules with real penalties.
Now, obviously, Tom's the one living through this. Tom's the one that's getting absolutely slaughtered online. And Tom's the one 6 weeks later still having to go to the doctor and still can't train and do any kind of combat. So he's the man that's living with this, okay? So you understand, you kind of will get emotional. You will be pissed off and you will think that Cyril Gane was doing that on purpose. I still don't, okay? I don't think Cyril Gane did that on purpose. What you want to do is crack someone in the face. And when the hands are out, when you go to grab, if someone comes in to take you down or whatever, sometimes that happens. That's why this whole rule of the fingers being up, not allowed there, but they're allowed there, is stupid.
This is number one.
Because what happens when someone comes forward and you got to grab them, because you can grab, you're allowed to in the rules, fingers go haywire, go into eyes. Make a fist, make a loose fist. It's not hard. That's all that's going to happen.
Michael Bisping offered his perspective, saying Tom has every right to be frustrated since he's dealing with all the fallout, the medical appointments, training disruptions, and weeks of lost momentum. Bisping doesn't think Cyril Gane intentionally threw that eye poke. Sometimes fingers just extend naturally. When you're reaching for grips or trying to control distance, it's part of those scrambling exchanges. He believes the current rule about keeping fingers pointed up or down is too simple for the complexity of actual fighting. His solution is teaching fighters to maintain loose fists when they're not actively punching, making it a fundamental part of training from the beginning.
Is listen to the doctors. Do not rush anything. The man's still young. He's in his prime. He's not on borrowed time. He's still got years ahead of him. Listen to the doctors. Come back, whoop some ass, take the gloves off. No more Mr. Nice Guy. Tell everyone to go themselves, knock some people out, and this whole escapade will be behind him. Doing interviews and showing the receipts and showing the doctor's appointments and all the rest of it, I don't think that's the way forward. I really don't.
Bisping emphasized that Tom needs to listen to his doctors and not rush back prematurely because eye injuries can have lasting consequences. He's still young and in his athletic prime, with years ahead to achieve his goals. Some people want Tom to return angry and violent, dropping the nice guy persona to prove a point and silence critics. But Bisping thinks that's the wrong approach entirely, not smart for Tom's long-term health or career development. Proper recovery and patience matter more than trying to make dramatic statements right now.
Is the world champion, and before that he was the interim world champion. You know that guy that knocked out 6 men in the first round? You know that guy that Bisping was talking about, who in his entire career in the UFC has only gone to the second round once? By the way, that was against a world champion who, by the way, he ended up stopping. That guy. That guy's done all of that in a good mood. He's done all of that with a smile. He's done all of that happy. What are you going to do with a 262-pound angry Tom Aspinall? And you can't answer that.
Shale made another interesting point about Tom's fighting style, noting that he became champion and racked up first-round finishes while staying calm and friendly throughout his rise. He's only needed a second round once in his entire IRC run and still got the finish when the fight went longer. So if that's what Tom does when he's relaxed and happy, what happens when he's motivated by anger and controversy? That's the unknown variable that could make this version of Tom extremely dangerous. We might see a completely different fighter when he returns.
Couldn't see Merab losing anytime soon. Fair play.
He has had 4 fights.
Fair play, Merab has had 4 fights. I'll be interested in a trilogy. I definitely want to see a trilogy of that.
Switching gears to UFC events, several fighters weighed in on the Bantamweight title fight. Khamzat Chimaev surprised everyone by congratulating Petr Yan on his performance and wishing Merab a quick recovery, showing unexpected sportsmanship from one of the sport's most intense competitors. It was a rare moment of class from someone who's usually all business and aggression.
I want to say he didn't at all go to the body, like with his hands, like he normally does, and we really feel like that could have probably been a difference maker. Kind of like when the first fight, Jan kept attacking the calf, and then Merab started kicking his leg back, and eventually he hurt him, had him forced to switch into the southpaw stance. This time, Jan was a lot more comfortable in the southpaw stance because he was having a lot more success with that left body kick. And just a couple of technical things we were doing wrong. I think once we look at it and evaluate it together, we'll all kind of see the same thing and be able to make those adjustments relatively quick. And just kind of do some fight walkthroughs, some fight simulations. And I think that's going to be the difference maker to us making adjustments to his adjustments. And
Muhammad Mokaev praised Merab's incredible work rate, pointing out that while some fighters compete once per year, Merab put together 4 title-level performances in 12 months. The physical demands of that schedule are insane when you consider championship weight cuts, 5-round fights, and the full promotional obligations every time. Mokaev called it unbelievable consistency from one of the hardest workers in the division. Tom Aspinall shared his thoughts on the fight, admitting he couldn't imagine Merab losing before it actually happened because of how dominant he'd looked recently. Even with the setback, Tom gave Merab full credit for his incredible 4-fight run at championship level. He thought the competitive nature of the fight proved these two could have another great match if they run it back. Aljamain Sterling broke down the technical aspects, noting that Merab didn't work the body with his hands like he usually does, and that strategic change may have hurt him with the judges. He observed that Jan looked more comfortable fighting southpaw this time and was landing that laid body kick consistently. Sterling believes these are fixable adjustments once they review the tape together and doesn't think we saw the best version of Merab that night. Leon Edwards called the fight spectacular and admitted he watched it twice because there was so much technical skill on display. He specifically praised Jan's takedown defense and how well he handled pressure from one of the division's best grapplers. Just high-level work from both fighters in his assessment. Petr Yan, now the new champion, after years of ups and downs, marked the moment by saying history was made and thanked everyone who supported him through the difficult periods of his career. He dedicated the victory to his family and team, the people who believed in him through tough losses and controversies. Yan said this win finally restored the natural order after feeling like everything had gone sideways for so long. From Tom Aspinall's eye poke situation that's still developing to the bantamweight title shakeup that completely reshuffled the division, these storylines are moving fast across multiple weight classes. Fighters from every division are jumping in with their takes and opinions. Fans are divided on whether an immediate trilogy makes sense or if Yan should face fresh contenders first, and the debates are heating up across every MMA platform. Everyone's waiting to see what the UFC announces next, how these situations develop, and what happens when these fighters get back in there.